The Mosaic series by Heavyocity is on a pretty crazy sale right now, and you might consider picking it up. I made this video to show you each of the Mosaic instruments and help you decide which one may be best for you. I like to call the Mosaic series Gravity's smaller sister. Like Gravity and Gravity 2, Mosaic is a beloved powerhouse of modern cinematic scoring among composers, with a sound that tells stories. Perfect for atmospheric soundtracks, video game music, TV and film scoring, but unlike its big counterpart from space, each Mosaic volume focuses on one specific aspect of cinematic sound design. Luckily, all instruments in the Mosaic series work exactly the same thanks to the powerful Mosaic engine. So you're ready to use any one of them once you've understood the general principle. Put simply, you load sound sources into 3 channels and change their behavior over time. And don't worry if you hate sound design or doing your own custom processing, hundreds of awesome presets already do the heavy lifting for us. So the thing about Mosaic is that its sound sources are pretty wild. They range from pads, strings, piano, and vintage synths, all the way to unique and more experimental sounds like digital noise and found sounds like pressing a TV remote, a typewriter, and tons of interesting sound design elements. On their own, some of these sound sources might seem random, but when combined in the presets, 3 of them together and processed through the Mosaic engine, the presets come to life. Presets are usually split into 2 main categories: aggressive gritty and mellow, more soft sounds. Then, depending on the library, they're subdivided into playable instruments for playing melody notes, rhythmic presets in straight and triplet timings, arpeggiated presets that split up chords into automatic note patterns for some very atmospheric sparkle, and pads, which often have a lot of built-in movement that we can adjust with the mod wheel. With one click, we can save our own presets. The main window of every Mosaic sample library shows us the 3 active sound sources with a few mixing options. Above, there's Mosaic's 6 main effects. These 6 effects are tied to the macro sequencer. Everything the macro sequencer says, the 6 effects will do. For example, if the macro sequencer goes up and down every 2 bars, so will the EQ and the gate and the filter, etc. Clicking on each effect opens the control window with more options to fine-tune the effect. We can tweak all of the effects of each of the 3 sound sources independently or tie them together by clicking on the link icon. Simple, yet powerful. In the options window, we can map sound sources across the MIDI keyboard simply by dragging and dropping each sound source, here marked in red, green and purple, or by using the finer controls below. The arpeggiator lets us build note patterns from the chords that we play. Again, we can fully customize all 3 channels with different arpeggio types, step counts and octave ranges, or link them together with this icon. All of this is super customizable if we want to. Most of the time, the presets will do just fine. Now that you have an understanding of how each of the Mosaic sample libraries works, let's dive into the libraries. Mosaic Bass is a cinematic synth bass that focuses on giving us a dynamic, low-end foundation to our cinematic tracks. Mosaic Bass can be mellow or aggressive. The rhythms are groovy and really open up if we use the mod wheel and introduce a lot of movement to them. So they never become boring. You don't have to play only low root notes with Mosaic Bass. It can do some plucks and textures as well. Some of these pads are actually deeply unsettling. The aggressive presets are perfect for tension scenes, a movie chase, or when your spaceship is getting sucked in by the gravitational drift of a black hole. When I bought it together with the other mosaics, I thought I would have the least usage for the bass, but nah, actually I've been using it quite a lot as my go-to bass synth whenever I need movement or dynamics. The sound sources have really nice attack sounds that give it a quite gnarly feel when combined with the synth, subs or drone sound sources. So yeah, Mosaic Bass, super useful for the low end. I wouldn't say it's indispensable because other synth basses also have pretty nice presets, but I like the amount of life and dynamics in the sound. Please leave the video a thumbs up, it helps me have more people find my content, and feel free to ask any questions about the Mosaic series down in the comments. I'll be happy to help you out. Mosaic Keys always reminds me of a burning landscape somehow. The camera is zooming out and you get like a credit scene, or the film noir detective is driving through the wilderness in their car and you get this cinematic feel of contemplation. What does it all mean? It's just super evocative. Mosaic Key mixes the sonic warmth of electric keys with these super weird found sounds and elements that give it this sizzling sound on top, evoking this sort of burning sensation for me. For example, listen to these sound sources here. And these on top of the synth keys makes just absolutely gorgeous and evocative presets. There's often a bit of distortion going on. It's gritty. This characteristic sound makes Mosaic Keys definitely one of my favorites, both for melodies and leads, as well as layered textures. Speaking of leads, Mosaic Leads. Mosaic Leads is a statement synth. Big, bold analog synth lead for modern scoring. It delivers everything from aggressively ripping through a heavy mix in a Doom-like fashion to layered textures that add depth and dimension. Again, in my opinion, what sets Mosaic Leads apart from other more conventional synth leads is the blend of unique sound sources and sound design elements. Like, listen to these noises and attacks. yeah, if you mix these with like crazy over-the-top synth leads, you get something pretty unique, especially if you put it into this engine. Mosaic Leads effortlessly adds powerful melodic presence to my tracks. It can sound like wild computer beeps or alarm sirens. But you can also get some more thoughtful and mellow sounds out of it. But I would say get this one primarily if you want to cut through and talk business. Here's something I wrote earlier. All of the synth leads are layered instances of Mosaic Leads. Neon is Heavyocity's new take on the harmonically rich world of vintage synthesis, and it makes me kind of rewatch Stranger Things. Neon gives us over 100 snapshots with retro synths ranging from warm, nostalgic synth sounds to keyset mullets, chiptunes mixed with digital noises and attack partials. And again, all of these in the 3 channels of the presets make for some pretty awesome sounds. On its own, you might think, what the hell am I supposed to do with the sound of a TV remote being pressed? But once inspired by these presets, where the found sounds meet the synth, it creates beautiful soundscapes that tell a story. Neon goes from warm pads and dreamy bells all the way to digital chaos. The presets are inspiring and it's very clear that someone put thought into these. Next up, we got Mosaic Pads. Mosaic Pads is dynamic cinematic textures that tell a story. It ranges all the way from mellow to eerie, unnerving, gritty. It has great layered ambiences where you have great control over the shape with the Mosaic engine. This was the only one so far that I haven't picked up myself. I'll probably do it soon enough. So here are some of the presets from the official walkthrough. I think they sound absolutely fantastic and full of life. You can play around with the gate, make them stutter on the higher mod wheels, and really morph these pads into something. This potential for dynamic processing has always been super crucial for me when it comes to pads. Let's be honest, I get easily bored by pads. I'm not a huge fan of them per se, but whenever there's something that happens to them over time, they catch my attention and suck me right in. In Mosaic Pads, we have over 100 presets or starting points. I would say this one is perfect to layer with another one of the Mosaic instruments because pads are usually not spectacular on their own. If you take a pad as the foundation of your cinematic atmosphere, however, and then put some sparkle on top, like salt to a soup, with either one of the other libraries, it sort of gets exponentially more interesting and more awesome. Mosaic Plucks is definitely one of my favorites here. I call Mosaic Pads the ASMR library of the Mosaic series. It sounds so like all these sparkles flying from left to right. Mosaic Plucks combines all sorts of organic sources: synths, strings, harps, a toy gun, an overdriven vinyl needle, and reverse samples. It's very nice to make these presets sound haunting when you have like one reverse layer in the background. The result is a wonderful collection of arpeggios that bounce through the stereo spectrum, adding all kinds of nice harmonic sparkle. Now, most of the sounds in Mosaic Pluck are short and repeated. It's more like particles that bounce around everywhere, more than, let's say, like pads or what we saw in Mosaic Bass. Not all of them, though. The nailed piano you can play just like a normal synth. But the strength in Mosaic Pluck definitely lies in its stutter effect, subtle reverse shifts, and the way it uses the left and right stereo spectrum. I often use Mosaic Pluck to broaden up my tracks as a cinematic layer in the background because of the pluckiness, the shortness of the samples. It's easy to have them pierce through the mix. It's also easy to build some super unique hybrid textures when you layer a few of these instances. I definitely recommend playing around with the arpeggiator with this one. Because of the short notes, there are tons of options here to create interesting grooves and note patterns ourselves. Pluck, definitely one of my Mosaic favorites. Let's talk about Mosaic Tape. Mosaic Tape draws from the inspiring magic of aged analog tape. We've got all sorts of processed orchestral sound sources like brass and strings, flutes, keys, and tune percussion. We even got processed vocal samples and synths for a super broad sample pool, which is then processed and undergoes analog tape processing. Together with all sorts of noise samples and effects, we got over 100 presets for warm, moving textures that seriously enrich or take over the spotlight of many of my tracks. Some of these noises are just so gorgeous with how they shift with the mod wheel as the 6 main effects move over time. The gate accelerates and slows down. Mosaic Tape really uses the Mosaic engine to its strength. Because the sounds are so diverse with all sorts of digitally sampled orchestral instruments as a sound pool, it's hard to describe what Mosaic Tape sounds like in general. I would say most of it is like very rich, harmonically full sounding with lots of rhythmic interest to it and imperfections. Like, this is what we like about analog tape and why we use analog tape effects nowadays, I guess, because they don't sound perfect. They have their rough edges, and I have to say, good job, Heavyocity, on that. It's absolutely gorgeous. Last, but definitely not least, Mosaic Voices. We've got both male and female sound sources, together with synthesized vocal pads. With Mosaic Voices, we've got hybrid and organic presets, so it's a super rich palette that goes all the way from synthetic to soulful, depending on where we're browsing in the presets. These can become really haunting. And I think they're absolutely gorgeous. You got crescendos and swells on the organic vocals. Organic is relative here. They don't sound like a choir sample library, but compared to the hybrid presets, you still can easily recognize what the singers might have sounded like during the recordings, and it's not completely digitally distorted or warped. The preset hybrid death rattle, for example, is quite hard to pinpoint if this is based on a synth vocal pad or if there are real voices mixed in between. And I like composing exactly on the edge of the organic and the electronic. It can make a soundtrack come to life and be more interesting, like here with the formant gatings. I've always had a weak point for gated, stuttery, rhythmic, hybrid vocal patches. The use case is probably a bit narrower with Mosaic Voices than compared to Mosaic Tape, for example. But at the same time, I find these so pretty. Like, these are quite different vocals than many sample libraries that you may already got. Again, don't see this as a replacement for like a solo vocal sample library like Atlantis by Zero G or a choir library, but more as a tool to experiment, blend, and morph the uniqueness of the human voice. I think the results are absolutely amazing. Listen to your gut and maybe pick those libraries where the demos gave you goosebumps, where you felt your fingers itch to try them out on a track yourself, and I'm pretty sure you'll like what you get.